So microbiota is a term used to describe the diversity of the microorganisms that reside in our gut. Most of them are in what we call the colon or the large bowel, so the far end of our gut, which has a very high microbial content. Mostly we think of bacteria, but there are actually other types of microbes as well, but most of the research has been about bacteria. Now, some of these bacteria are harmful to us, so we need to be able to deal with the fact that we're housing harmful bacteria. But in fact, most of these bacteria are rather helpful to us, and they actually help us with our metabolism, for example. So the way these bacteria thrive is they live on what's left over after we've digested our food. So we don't actually take up into our bloodstream everything from our meal. Some of it is left behind, and that feeds our gut microbiota. And some organisms thrive on, some of the carbohydrates that are left behind, for example. Some of them thrive on leftover protein and what have you. So we've got this enormous diversity of bacteria living in our gut, and we need to live sort of symbiotically with them. We need to establish a balance. And our immune system is very important in establishing this balance. Now, if you think of what the immune system does, if we have harmful bacteria in our gut, our immune system will sort of seek them out and destroy them. On the other hand, our immune system also is receiving signals from the helpful bacteria, it turns out. So those bacteria produce chemicals that tell our immune system how to react. If you like, it's a sort of immune education. So there's this two-way communication between our immune system and our gut bacteria. And what we think is when the bacteria diversity is upset or imbalanced, and that's what we call dysbiosis, the signals our immune system is receiving are not quite right. And so our immune system doesn't function very well, and it turns out, or doesn't function as well as it might, and it turns out our metabolism also doesn't function as well as it might. And what this means is there's a link between this abnormal gut microbiota, dysbiosis, and metabolic changes, and there's a link between immune changes. Now, you heard people have established that maybe the gut bacteria are also influencing the brain, but they also influence, so we call that the gut-brain axis, but they also influence a lot of other organ systems in the body. So the liver, for example, which is an important metabolic organ, our fat tissue, which of course is a metabolic organ, but also lungs. So it turns out there's a gut-lung balance axis. So the gut bacteria actually have some sort of communication with our lungs. Now, this is very interesting in the context of COVID-19, because very early on, Chinese researchers, who of course were the first to start looking at patients with COVID-19, noted there was dysbiosis in many of the patients that they were looking after. Now, of course, what you don't know is whether dysbiosis preceded the COVID-19 or whether the COVID-19 caused the gut dysbiosis. So it's a cart and horse question, a chicken and egg question. But the way to investigate that, of course, is to do something to modify the gut microbiota and see what the impact is. And actually, there have been studies like that now done even in Europe, where patients with COVID-19 have been treated with probiotics alongside the normal treatment, and the health outcomes have been looked at. And, there is a study suggesting that the respiratory outcomes are better with probiotics in patients with COVID-19. That's a small study that needs, we need more investigation. But what this is establishing is that there is a relationship between the gut microbiota and what's actually happening in our immune systems and elsewhere in the body.
Yes, and obviously, therefore, the importance of having a good, varied microbiota. And obviously, we're looking there, as you say, about whether COVID looks like it is impacting a microbiota in a negative way. And in terms of, as you touched on earlier on, other things that may impact it is is aging, a natural part of aging. A microbiota is less diverse as we age. Obviously, as nutritionists, we're always talking about, balanced diet, and a diet that doesn't have much variety would also therefore limit people's microbiota. And also something, antibiotics, of course, if they are needed and they're suggested by your GP, you should take them, but obviously they work well, but they do also kill the good stuff. So we need to make sure that when we finish taking the antibiotics, that we need to pay a lot of attention to good bacteria and putting all the good things back in. So I guess with that in mind,